Assalamualaikum and good morning to our fellow friend and also to Madam Sharifah. Okay, today we were gonna present about the introduction to the internal audit. Let's go to the overview. According to the Institute of Internal Auditor North America (IIA), internal audit is an independent, objective assurance and advisory practice intended to add value and enhance the operation of the organization. It leads to the achievement of its goal through a structured, focused approach to risk management, control and management process evaluation, and also enhancing effectiveness. Okay, from the definition given, we know that internal audit is more on appraisal activity that established within the entity as a service to another entity. Okay, one example. In the organization, there are one department. Okay, if the main objective of that department is to improve their customer satisfaction, then the internal audit can examine whether the staff of the department are sent to the training on how to handle inquiry and complaint from the customer. As we all know, the staff training is one of the important or the one of the factors that will help the department to improve their customer service or customer satisfaction toward their product and service. Okay, next we go to the difference between IA and EA, internal audit and external audit. As we all know, the external audit is an independent contractor practicing accounting from outside of the organization, and usually there are the member of the MIA. This external audit focuses on the accuracy and understandability of historical events as expressed in the financial statement, and their review records supporting financial statement periodically, usually once a year. For internal audit is an organization employee or can be independent entity also, which is outsourced or co-sourced, and they are not usually a member of MIA. This internal audit focuses on future events by evaluating control design to assure the accomplishment of the entity goal and objective. And they also review the activity continuously in the organization.
The internal auditing profession has developed to better understand the needs of the profession and to shape the role of internal auditors. In the late 1990s, the internal audit focused mainly on transaction and assurance work. However, the scope of internal audit has expanded and extended to the evaluation of controls, threats, and governance. Its roles also now involves consulting. The task of internal audit can be divided into three processes. They are governance process, risk management process, and control process. In the governance process, the tasks of internal auditor include board-related and governance-related. Meanwhile, for the risk management process, the internal auditors assess risk and manage risk. For the control process, internal auditors ensure the effectiveness of the control and the coordination of control as well as the organizational objectives. As you can see on the screen, there are 4 examples of general tasks of internal auditors. The first one is to monitor internal control. It is an ongoing basis and careful consideration is needed to ensure the internal control systems are in place. Second, to review the compliance with external and internal requirements. The internal auditor determines how well is the adherence of the existing plans, policies, and procedures. Next, it is to determine how the risk is handled. The internal auditors review and assess the truthfulness, adequacy, and application of various controls. And lastly, to review the economy, efficiency, and effectiveness of operations. External requirements are enforced by laws, regulations, and policies, while internal requirements are set down by the administration of the company. This is when internal auditors have to ensure that the company comply with these rules and regulations.
Hi, I am Rosina Ixi, and today I'll be presenting why internal auditors are necessary for listed companies, or why internal auditors are important. So, in paragraph 15.27 of Bursa's listing requirement states that each listed issuer is required to establish an internal audit function that reports directly to the audit committee. So in paragraph 15.27 of Bursa Securities listing requirements, there first, a listed issuer must establish an internal audit function which is independent to the activities it audits. And second, a listed issuer must ensure its internal audit function reports directly to the audit committee. So basically, internal auditors are very important to a company because they are the ones that evaluate and improve the efficiency and effectiveness of risk management, internal control, and governance process of a company. So in other words, they are the eyes and ears of the audit committee. So next, what do they do on a day-to-day basis? So as shown in the previous slide by Esther, I'm just going to elaborate some of the points, which is the first one. Review organizations' business processes. They focus on effectiveness and efficiency of process by providing unbiased assessment of completeness and adequacy of business process. So the second one is they evaluate current efficiency of risk management procedures. So internal audit represents management's interest while they evaluate risk decisions and handling techniques. The next one is they prevent fraud and theft of assets. As we all know, internal audit, they can detect and uncover frauds. The next one, ensure compliance of companies towards laws and regulations. And the last one is recommend ways to improve internal controls and governance. Thank you.
What happens if there are no internal audit in big organization? First, alignment of operations to organization strategy and objectives become less productive. When implementing strategic objectives, the organization should not only consider the impact and changes to its operating model, but also how effectively the strategy has been executed. For instance, internal audit should be questioning whether the defined strategy was altered or has evolved during the actual execution. Identified emerging strategies should be assessed to better understand the root cause of the change and the potential impact. For example, is the change complementary or contradictory to the defined strategy? To handle this issue, internal auditor would perform audits of the process of strategy development. For example, evaluate strategy formulation, the degree to which strategy is translated into objectives and key performance measures, and evaluate whether delivery has resulted in the desired performance and results. Next is ineffective talent management. The challenge is to ensure that the right individuals are hired, retained, motivated, and developed to help the organization achieve its business objectives. Organizations also need to evaluate risk mitigation plans in case of top talent resignations. To prevent this issue arises in big organization, internal auditor would help in auditing the recruiting and hiring procedure and evaluate the efficiency of human resource processes. For example, assess the design and effectiveness of the recruitment and selection process to ensure that the right people are hired. Not just that, internal audit also audit the internal communication process, assess the ability to act upon received feedback, and ensure long-term improvements. Third is business continuity and crisis response be affected. Many organizations have developed a disaster recovery plan and business continuity procedure that have rarely been put to the test in a real crisis situation. With the rapidly evolving business environment, the nature of crisis traditionally planned for is changing. For example, in more recent times, there is increased exposure to financial crisis due to the increased volatility and interdependency of the global economy. To overcome it, internal auditor helps big firms by conducting an independent review of the entire crisis management system, including governance, processes, and risks, and evaluate the quality and extent of coverage of various crises.
Can internal audit fail? My answer is yes. This is because internal audit teams occasionally struggle to protect their organizations. One mistake of overlooking a particular aspect in the internal auditing, the consequences the company must bear are detrimental. These are examples of situations that can occur more often than it should. First, poor prioritization from top. If management has not bought into the importance of compliance, then the people implementing and working on the controls, which is the audit internal team, will not either. Second, lack of documentation. Without documentation on a control of records regarding the performance of that control, we must rely on the inquiry alone. However, inquiry is considered the weakest form of audit evidence, and under many compliance frameworks, is not alone sufficient. Without proof, we will assume that process is either not operating or being performed inconsistently. Third, internal assessment too self-congratulatory. A poor internal assessment trips up many organizations going into an external audit for the first time. People will naturally try to see themselves and others in the best light. In the business world, this often means internal assessors overlook important shortcomings. The fourth one is inefficient audit personnel was recruited. The poor performance of internal audit could be caused by the internal auditor appointed have lack of knowledge about the role of internal auditor. The fifth one is lack of standard operating procedures or policies. Failure to implement standard operating procedures or organization policies means that the auditors will not conduct an efficient audit because management perceptions sometimes differ from those of the auditor. The sixth one is low budget and baseless appraisal. Low budget and baseless appraisal may cause the audit staff demotivate and leading to a low performance audit.
As mentioned previously, mistakes in internal audit happens from time to time. It is inevitable, but fortunately, there are ways to prevent such mistakes from occurring too often, and there are ways to correct those mistakes so that it won't lead to a much bigger problem. Now I am going to give a few examples, steps that can be taken by the organization or the management so that internal audit failure doesn't happen. Firstly, at the earliest stage, it is important for compliance to the professional standards being incorporated into the culture of the organization. Management attention gives teeth to a policy which makes control sticks and which reduce the chances of auditors not in compliance with the professional standards. Next, it is important for company to document what they are doing in written policies, ensure everyone is trained in the proper procedures, and create a paper trail of the performance of the controls. It is also important to develop an independent internal audit program so that audit work can be carried out without bias and without influence of outsiders. Next is to ensure that the recruitment process of an audit personnel has the involvement of an experienced audit professionals. Management should also prepare a good budget for internal audit and appraise audit staff based on their audit performance. Those are a few steps that can be taken by the organization, the management, to ensure that internal audit runs smoothly. But why is internal audit important? Internal audit is important and necessary for the organization to provide an independent objective assurance and consulting activity designed to add value and improve organization process. Next, to provide the board, audit committee, and management with an independent assurance service that emphasizes on evaluating the efficiency of governance, risk management, and control mechanism defined by the management. Lastly, to provide practical guidance on management risks and controls.